Okay, good afternoon and good morning, depending on where you are in the world. Ladies and gentlemen, fellow academics, students and friends, welcome to day 7 of the HKDI Master Series Sustainable Swiss Design in Fashion. I am Cassandra Ng from the Department of Fashion Image Design, and I will be your moderator today. We are very honored to have with us Ms. Isabela Gygax, an Artistic Scientific Associate at the Sustainability Department of Zurich University of the Arts. She contributes to sustainable education and development in the arts by focusing on the integration, mediation, and testing of existing and innovative knowledge and applied practices. Isabela is a fashion anthropologist, critical designer, and fashion activist. After her training at the École de la Chambre syndicale de la haute couture parisienne in fashion design and pattern making, she obtained her first master's degree in fashion futures at the University of the Arts London, UAL, in 2018, and subsequently her second MA in 2022 in fashion cultures histories, also from UAL. Her research focus lies on the issue of human dignity and care in the context of fashion, design, and dress. She has since worked with refugee women, various NGOs, and the Youth Development Foundation. But regardless of the medium, ultimately, her energy goes into working toward a kinder system that values people, environment, creativity, and profit in equal measures. Now, without further ado, let us give a warm welcome to Ms. Isabela Gygax from Zurich University of the Arts. Isabela, the floor is all yours.
Thank you so much, Cassandra, for this very lovely introduction. Hello, everyone. I will switch to sharing my screen with you. But yeah, that's me talking. As Cassandra said, and you all probably know, we are here to discuss sustainable Swiss fashion design. And I really want to bring forward an understanding of sustainable fashion thinking. And we're going to see that on an example of 3 case studies. The lecture has 2 parts. First, we're going to dive into seeing what sustainability means in a fashion context, understanding really the status quo. Where are we right now? How did we get there? And how can we challenge this status quo as well? Further, in the second part, we're going to see the Swiss fashion design response to sustainability. We have the case study of 3 fashion brands. And very briefly, to introduce them, I will give you a short introduction into the history of Swiss textile industry. We're going to see Fin Project, Question, and Rafael Kouto. So let's start with the status quo of sustainability, really how to understand that. The status quo right now is that we are in a present with devastating consequences. As we know, the current fashion model is very unsustainable because it involves the unsustainable extraction of materials and resources. These extractions have huge negative social impacts and as well ecological impacts. Very often we know more about the ecological impacts, but every ecological harm is also a harm to a local community. And every harmed local community has, of course, further implications for a wider society and wider interconnectedness of us humans. The production, the consumption, and subsequently also the caretaking uses up a vast amount of valuable resources. Just think about how often you wash your clothes after you bought them. And after that and before that, how often was the fabric washed in production? So how much water was used? That's just a very small idea of what this means. And what there is as well is an unsustainable mindset. The fashion industry more and more embraces sustainable thinking, but the predominant mindset is that we need something new every day or every time we go to a new party, we need a new dress. We have the mindset very much established of fast fashion. It has to be produced as fast as possible, that our demand has to be met as fast as possible, and also that the lifespan of our garments is as short as possible. So what fast fashion does, it makes it normal for consumption to end in waste. What we see here is a river flowing out of a denim factory. You can see, even though they're very bright colors, they're very unnatural, they're harmful. And what I like about this picture is that it shows the ecological devastation, the pollution, what it does to earth and water, but it also shows a human being in it, living a daily life and being affected, completely unprotected from chemicals used for garments that are produced for another place somewhere else in the world, that is not at all connected anymore with this local community and with this local ecosystem, but that obviously suffers a huge harm. The human cost of the fast production model that we have now ends in huge catastrophes. Like next year, actually, it marks 10 years. The Rana Plaza collapse, where 1,138 people died in one day, and it left 2,500 people injured, and many of them till today aren't able to support their families anymore and didn't receive any compensation. This is a catastrophe that happened in one day, but at the same time, what we see also here, for example, in this image, you see a garment worker without any protection working on denim, denim dusting just to have like a certain washed look. This practice is extremely carcinogenic, very, very harmful to health. And again, the end user of these jeans is completely disconnected with this process because, of course, the retailers do not make their marketing with the production process. Subsequently, people in the production countries, they really have to go out and fight for their rights. Very often the states are too weak or have weak structures or a lot of corruption. So there is no safety guarantee or anything for these people if they don't get out and really fight for themselves. What I like about this picture here, where we see this garment worker, is that she demands in English, like she knows this picture goes around the world. She says that she doesn't want to die for fashion. And to me, this is very important. Like that, if we talk about sustainable fashion, all these things, is that there are very, very real life human consequences of a consumer culture. And what I like also about this picture is that these people are not just sad and helpless with their condition, but they really get out and demand a better treatment. And once we have the garment produced, once we bought it, so it went into consumption, once we decided that we don't need it anymore because maybe advertisement told us that now we have to look in a different way, we need a different color of this dress even to remain fashionable, hence the fashion mindset again, we throw away our garments, or in the case of this picture, we donate them. What we see is the port in Ghana, where every week 15 million pieces of clothing arrive. This means 6% of that, this is nearly 1 million of these pieces, are from absolutely unusable anymore. These are already considered garbage. And 40% around are already used so much they cannot be resold. So they end up in the landfill, and the local community is handed over this huge responsibility and this huge pollution to deal with. And of course, as you can see here, they're completely overwhelmed. There are literally mountains of garments that are thrown away and wasted. To me, as a practitioner, as a designer, it really hurts my heart thinking that something that I put thought in it, I made research, I really put my heart in my design. And then also as a maker, I sew, I iron, I take measurements. Of course, these garments are from fast fashion industrial pace, but still, as someone who really works also with the hands, to see that at the end, something that took up so many resources, be it water, crop, earth, land, and humans, ends up like this is really, really something that hurts my heart. And also very impressive to see the scale. And this is just one little part in the globe. We have other sites like this, for example, in the Philippines or in India. So it's really something that happens very, very drastically. Here are just 5 facts if you want to take a picture on your phone, a screenshot if you're at home. Just 5 random facts that really show off the status quo and how devastating it is. Speed, incredible amount of cutting room floor waste. So 60 billion square meters of fabric just cut away and chucked. Or that one t-shirt needs as much water as a human being in 3 years. Or also that after the Corona crisis began, so many millions of garment workers were laid off from one day to the other without any compensation, very often without their wages from 3 months ago, because their money contracts are so bad that very often they're paid only every 3 months. And they have no rights or very difficult situations to unionize, to actually go and demand better pay wages. I like the fact under the little piggy bank, where it shows that it was a survey done by Fashion Revolution, that 91 fashion brands that they surveyed, only 12% of them could actually demonstrate any action that they tried or that they wanted to pay their garment workers more than the absolute minimum wage that was legally required in a country where the state requires very little, because it, as we told before, maybe corruption, weak state structures, etc. So of course, like the vast majority, if they don't have to pay a decent wage, they just won't. So I think these are very interesting facts just to see this is the current state we are living in and we are participating in, and we are part of everything what happens here in one way or another, especially if we are in the production of fashion. In this series of Swiss design, I am sure you came across a lot. Across the word quality. I love the word quality, and I really love the Swiss notion of good quality. We have a big pride in being able to design things of good quality, longevity, functionality, also aesthetically pleasing and having an aesthetic quality. In my research, I very much go and look at quality from the perspective of human dignity. Human dignity means that you are able to sustain your life today and sustain the life of future generations. I love that is like part of the word sustainability. It also incorporates the interconnectedness between all humans and between humans and the earth, humans and all the other life on earth. If there is a lack in dignity at one point, it doesn't make it right on another. If a garment worker is exploited and has to do 150 hours overtime in a month, while I get the gain of buying a t-shirt for €5, to me as well, I suffer in a way as well. I am buying bad quality. I am buying a quality that requires exploitation. So these externalized costs are really like the core of the harmful consumption culture. Someone somewhere else is paying, and in the return, I receive something of decreased quality. It can be that the garment made under very dire conditions has surprisingly good functionality or has surprisingly good longevity. Because of course, even if they are in dire conditions, these garment workers, by the way, 80% of global garment workers are women. So it's also very much a woman's issue, and they give their best, even though they're exhausted and exploited. They take their work very often very serious and try to do a good product. And yet still, it is a product that needed, it was, in my view, so badly designed that it needed exploitation and bad wages to come to life. And this is where I say that no quality without dignity. To also have this perspective and this vision, it is very, very a good exercise for everyone to envisage a world where you would like to live in. And as fashion practitioners, as a second thought, also to think about the place of fashion in this world, and maybe how fashion would look like, how the lives would look like. And there is really this thing where I want this interconnectedness of the consumer understanding the production of what he or she is actually wearing. This is where my installation Homo Laborans comes in place. It was a speculative design prototype in from my MA thesis. In this picture, you see part of the installation in the gallery, where these are all white garments laid out. And there's a projection that I will explain of a garment worker. And the visitors were asked to stand onto these garments and watch a haute couture seamstress, she was the model, being transformed into a human that was able to support every harm that the production of the current fashion model implicates. This looked like this. This is part of my process. I looked at various health issues that are implied in the make, cut, trim process of the garments, so in the factories. For example, we saw it earlier with the denim, where the dusting of jeans gives you lung cancer, and also for the breathing systems in the face, the nose, of everything. And then together with health specialists and the doctor, we speculated on how the organs of a human being would have to adapt in order to create or evolve a human that would not suffer from all these very bad conditions. This meant that we would just say, accept the status quo, how it is now, but we have a consumer demand that doesn't want to feel guilty. So I guess each one of you, if you buy a pair of jeans, you don't want to think about the garment worker who suffered horrible lung cancer and died after 7 years working in this factory. You probably want a happy garment worker making your garments. So if we cannot change the status quo because we say it is not changeable, it is too big, let's just give up, okay. Then this work proposed some sort of course, speculative evolution. Here you see the final evolution, or part of it. It is a continuous transformation, where my friend, who usually really works for haute couture brands, has now different kidneys, completely different nose, completely different lungs, completely different hands, etc. And you see that this does not look like a healthy, normal human. Now, what it did during the installation is that the viewers who were living in Switzerland or in London, so they're used to be the end users, the consumers of the goods, for them it became really visual, that even though now on the label they wouldn't have to have a guilty feeling, they still felt very awkward. And during the discussions and the workshops, we found out that actually it was the understanding that our consumer demand was the core, was where actually all these very unhealthy and exploitative practices came from. So it is not something that happens, it is something that is interconnected. Our consumer demand and our wish for convenient and extremely fast, everyday new fashion so the mindset, produces an environment where if people would want to be healthy, they, for example, could look like this. So this really was a visual implication. That's why I say dignity is something where we all are interconnected and where we really have to be able to see what our action means. So at one point, we went from usership to a consumer society. What does usership mean? Garments were designed basically to last forever, or at least for as long as possible. Garments were designed to be given to the next generation, very often in ceremonial happenings. We see that throughout many cultures and many, many times in histories. Garments were sacred. Garments were symbols of family, symbols of love. Nobody in the 19th century would think of chucking away a garment because it was worn once to a wedding. And what came with that also the skill set for making and mending. So for actually keeping your garment and working with it. So maybe there is a hole and then you mend it. There will be a little scar, but this is part of the life of a garment. I really love this picture. It's from the book, The Craft of Use by Kate Fletcher. You will find this as well in the extended reading list in the end, where this jacket, and you can see it is already an older gentleman. This jacket has followed this man not only through 3 generations, but also throughout his entire life. And every time he got a bit bigger, he added a bit more fabric, or he mended it, or he added, you see even the knitted details because he ran out of yarn and stuff like that. So it was very an item that really followed him during his life and became like a friend or a companion. This is something where we take a lot of happiness from. There is something comforting. This feeling of comfort and happiness has been absorbed through in the consumer society and replaced through planned or even perceived obsolescence. This means that designers design failure and the end of life or even the waste into the product from the beginning. If we have planned obsolescence, it can be that just at some point the software isn't updating anymore. For example, if we have a computer or a phone, and the perceived obsolescence, that's where fashion is really king, is that the object, the item itself might be perfectly fine, but through advertisement, we learn that it is not fashionable anymore. We will be ousted by society when we were, for example, flat heels, even though now it's high heels. And the thing is that our value in society is linked to our consumer performance and to our fashionability. So if we are unfashionable, society can see that we have not fulfilled our value or our duty of consumption. And the fashion community will then even make it worse and say, like, we have no taste. So there is this very ingenious set of ways to make goods go from A to B as many as possible, as fast as possible. And these cycles are faster and faster. Right now, for example, fast fashion companies go from new items every week to, for example, the brand Shein chucks out 10,000 items per day. So all the new and to you as a person to keep up, to be fashionable, to keeping up the fashion becomes very, very hard, and it becomes a very heavy burden. And so what we consider as happiness is linked to how the society treats us. Our value is linked in a consumer society on our consumer performance, and our success is very often linked with our fashionability. Before we ended in a consumer society, even though not everything was good in the past. But what was interesting was that mending a garment and using it or giving it to other generations was not at all something that was seen for lower castes or lower socioeconomic parts of society. Here we see, that's from my research at the V&A archives, we can see garments worn by dignitaries. So here, for example, that's a doge. It was like an Italian hat worn by the patrician, where we had a lot of details that were mended or added. And this was like maybe the richest man in town, but he would wear a hat that had imperfections and that you would see that it was worn. Or this glove, a cardinal glove. I don't know if the screen is big enough to see, but it's also very good mended. You nearly don't see it, but it had a hole, quite a big hole on the hand, and it has been mended. So you have a religious, high level person, a dignitary from highest esteem. And for them, it was completely normal to use garments that were mended because they are valuable. They were made very preciously. And what I like also about high society, where maybe there are more decadent tastes or decadent lifestyles, but even here with this ball gown, you can see here at the corsage, this lady probably spilled her red wine, but it was not chucked away. There were little elements that you could add onto it, a brooch, an extra ruffle. She even had a second corsage to use the skirt with during the day and one during the evening. So it was something very normal that you use your garments. So they get dirty, they get broken, and then you wash them or you mend them or you just try to find a solution instead just to chucking everything away. This was a completely insane idea back then. The notion of happiness does not come from something new, but if we have a cycle of, we see here, that's an illustration from the story of stuff, also in the resources, very interesting videos explaining very difficult ideas in a very simple way. So we have here us working probably with a newer computer, working hard hours, earning our money. We go back home, we sit in our chair. We wouldn't have this huge television anymore, but we are scrolling our phones and seeing all the new things that are fashionable, that how we should look like, seeing the influencers if there are new styles. So we feel a little bit empty and feel we need to buy something new. So we go and buy something new. Then we go back to work to earn the money, to go back home, to go and spend our money again on something else because advertisement told us now is the time for something new. So this cycle just like gives you this hit every time you buy something of new, but then very quickly it degrades to something much less valuable, and it is not a lasting happiness. It is maybe perceived happiness, but it's not something that lasts, that gives you companionship, like for example the jacket that we saw just in the beginning of this chapter. Here is just a very brief outline of the linear consumer system, where we exploit the earth for resources. Then we go into production, chemicals, pollution. Then we go into a big supermarket where we will buy very cheaply because it was externalized, the costs were externalized here. It would be more expensive if the water was clean. It would be more expensive if the agriculture was permanent. So we end up with very cheap things, and our value is about our consumer performance. So we buy, our houses get full of stuff that we at the end don't need because next week you will need new stuff. So you go and throw them away and waste it. What would be much more desirable is a system that values sustainability and equity, where we don't have a linear system, but a circular system where the ecological realm is respected, where it's not just extracted, but really understood how can we work together with Earth, together with nature? How can our production sites respect the local communities and the environment? How can we educate people to spend good money on good quality products? And also then, how do we treat our homes and our own values and our own perspective on our own happiness and how we are interconnected? Because we are also a local community and we are also part of an ecosystem. And so there is this connections. So now we are at the point where we can ask, okay, how to challenge the status quo? Very, very important is an action that comes from us. It is a reclaiming the sustainability, reclaiming the ability to sustain our future and the future of our coming generations, the future of our community. Less just thinking about your own individual circle of labor and consumption, but really about the ability to interact and engage. I wrote here, like, for example, like creating systems that really sustain that, for example, investing in permaculture instead of monoculture when it comes to the resources. Also asking who made my clothes, and then also stating I made your clothes. So if you're a producer, if you are a maker, then really go and be proud of what you can, of your skill, and share it with your community. And very importantly, even though of course we say sustainable fashion because we need to give it a word, actually there is no such thing as sustainable fashion. In my view, fashion is inherently, the real fashion is the idea of sustainability. We do good quality, we really care for people who make it, and we appreciate that with the values that it deserves. There's a lot of bad fashion instead. But of course, we talk about sustainable fashion to have a mutual understanding. But it is about the mindset. And I think also that we have to radically reinvent a notion of new. Is new the thing that came out of this exploiting labor exploiting factory? Maybe new means it was given to me from my mother, so it's new in my wardrobe. Maybe resources don't need to be extracted completely new from the earth. Maybe there are other solutions. There are. And very importantly also is just the idea of loved clothes last. So that if we love something, it lasts. As long as it lasts, it won't go somewhere into the landfill, and it won't waste resources or time or human work. Also very interesting, if you want to take a screenshot, is this from Maslow borrowed pyramid of needs. So you see at the top is buying. So that's the least thing we should be doing. And I think as practitioners, it is important that we see all the other, or also as entrepreneurs, that we see all the other options, how we can engage in fashion and garments. As entrepreneurs, we have to find good ideas. And I think, and I strongly believe, we have to find ideas that last not just for ourselves, but for the future generations and the future communities. So this is good entrepreneurship. There is a lot of room, even though the most sustainable garment is the one that is already in your wardrobe. Here we see Ursula de Castro, founder of Fashion Revolution. And I had the pleasure to work with her and actually be at exactly this conference. And I put her picture here because I like how she looks very strictly into the audience eyes and makes her case. So what we see here, for example, is I just wanted to share this picture, is a mended sock. And the technique that is used here is called Swiss darning. It is where through embroidery, you imitate the pattern of knitting. And that's something so mundane and everyday, like a sock, is something that can be mended and is a thing that you can actually have a relationship with is something that is very touching to me. And also to think about, I don't know who in the audience mended their socks lately. Here in Switzerland, it's wintertime. Maybe we could go to that as a meditative work to connect with our fashion sense. So now we come to the second part where we will see 3 case studies of Swiss fashion design. And as I said, it's not per se that they are Swiss, that they are sustainable fashion designers, but they definitely have a very intriguing sustainability roadmap. So an idea of how to achieve a goal and how to achieve a product that doesn't harm the world or even is a product that the world needs. The Swiss textile industry has a very long history. And it is a big part of our wealth as a nation that we have today. Here we see a fabric with a block print from the 18th century, with a back then very beloved motif of the tree of life. This technique of like printing color, lasting color on cotton wasn't invented in Switzerland, it was invented in India. Through the colonization and exploitation of not only the cotton from India, but also the cultural heritage. This technique came to Europe. It was banned by France and the UK, and this really helped Switzerland to appropriate this technique, and it was very, very beloved. Everybody wanted this fabric, everybody wanted affordable cotton garments with beautiful prints. Here you see a huge cotton harvest in India. And here is a slave ship where Swiss merchants invested in. So the wealth of the textile industry is very interconnected with colonial history, and also the exploitation again of cultural knowledge and resources. This is something that also even here in Switzerland has to be researched much more, and it is just in the awakening to like really recon how did we actually get to the ideas and the techniques that we later then developed that actually make so much up from our standpoint that we have today in the world. Konrad Alter was a man who invented the satin stitch loom, inspired from different techniques around the world. He made this weaving looms and embroidery looms that were not, this was not possible to do this earlier. It was all done very, very hardly by hand embroidering. So this was actually already part of the Industrial Revolution, where then this lies really in the Swiss engineering genius to like really have these machines where people could produce very quickly beautiful fabrics. This woman probably was working in her own cellar, in her own home. Many of the very beautiful products that came from the 18th and 19th century were homespun and homemade. And later then during the industrialization, also in the bigger industry, people earned very little money, even here in Switzerland, working for the textile industry, even though they were producing luxury goods. Here we see what really is a specialty of the Swiss textile heritage. It's the embroideries. It's the lace making. You can see, I saw this myself once when I was able to visit an archive. It's incredible the hours they go to, and this craftsmanship, mostly done by women, but also woven very often by men. You see how delicate these works are. Here, this is a loom card for the satin stitch loom, where you can see the embroidery and the patterns, how they are prepared. And this one here is an extremely delicate work on cotton tulle, which is one of the most difficult fabrics to produce, for the world. There was like a world exhibition, and 1768, I think, something like this, in the Americans. So I think it's very interesting, and I love what the crafts heritage is. And this is also part of the aesthetics and the wealth. Nowadays, the fashion scene has become much smaller, especially because we have a very high history, a very big history in the textile development rather than in the design, like, for example, Paris with the haute couture shows, etc. So now we see some cows, which many of you would associate with Switzerland. And that's also why the first brand that we will case study is the Finn Project. They do handbags and small leather goods. And what is interesting here, and I use the word radical quite often because I think it is very important for us to reckon that very big changes have to happen, is their sourcing and traceability of their materials. So it is incredible. From the Swiss mother cows, these are cows that are allowed to live outside with their calves. So they're not taken away from the mother and anything. The farmers take the rest of the milk, but not everything. They're cared for, and one day they die, or they are used for their meat. And then their waste product of their skin gets sorted, handed over to Italy, and tanned, vegetably tanned. So there's no any bad harm consequences for the environment. There is like a leather studio then in the same hub in Tuscany in Italy, where they produce the bags. And then they are sold in Switzerland, all abroad in Switzerland, etc. So from each step, from the cow to the finished product, you can visit, see, and inquire about each step. And that's some of their campaign, where you can see the bag. This is where the skins, like from the starting process to even the woman who sews the bags together. There are very simple designs, very few steps, because already like this, with very, very simple designs, no zippers or anything, the bags are relatively expensive. This model here costs around 300 francs, around 300 euros, if you can imagine that. So this is not something, it's not an everyday item, it's a little investment. This is why they try to keep their design as simple as possible, with as less working steps as needed. You can see on their website, they show each person responsible for each step. For example, here the raw material. This is one of the farmers catering to the cows we've seen before. This is the tannery in Santa Croce, Italy. So each person in each step is accountable for. They can stand there, take a picture of them, and be proud of their work. So I think this is a very interesting approach. The second brand that I want to bring to you is Question. This one is much more global. They also have a higher production volume. They produce bags and outdoor garments, such as jackets, and their invention is really banana tex. It's a very special fiber. They produce that in a permaculture in the Philippines. So they decided that they design and prototype in Zurich and here in Switzerland, but that the production will be in Asia to minimize actually CO2 footprints. And they have found the farmers who work there, there's a very special skill set that you need to extract the banana fibers. And then they work actually just 150 kilometers from Hong Kong. They have their factory where for over 20 years they have a connection there, so they know the people they work with, even though it's abroad. They regularly go there and meet them. Here we see the two founders at work, really looking at the fabrics. I think it's also super interesting, their resource, their idea of the bag. The banana tex fabric is biodegradable, and it's also coated in beeswax. So it's not 100% vegan, but it is natural and biodegradable. So there's like nearly a closed loop. They have some metal rings and 2 leather straps that are also vegetably tanned without any harm to the environment. So this closed loop idea is very important. Also, what I like about this brand is that their business is very viable. While we saw at Fin Project a very utopian and very perfect value chain, their products are in return very, very expensive. So it is much more a niche product. Through the more global perspective of QWSTION, they're actually able to make much more competitive prices without exploiting anyone. So exploiting someone is not a necessity to make a viable business. And that's what I like about this brand, that there is a proof that you can be not in an extreme high luxury section. Still, the bags have their prices, but including to that price is that you can bring back your bag. If there is a tear, they will repair it in-house here in Zurich, or they have also in Austria shops where you can go and bring them back. They will repair them, they will wash them. So there is an entire service included in that for the first 2 years, I think it's for free. And then after that, you can just come back for after warranty care. So there's actually another source of income. And I think that's what I mean by entrepreneurial thinking in a sustainable manner, and really incorporating the ideas of fashion items in them. The last one is Rafael Kouto. He's an apparel designer, a fashion designer. He has custom-made lines and ready-to-wear lines. He is from the Italian part of Switzerland, and has if I know it correctly, Congolese roots, which really brings together everything that we've seen right now, in my view. We see a designer who is culturally diverse, open-minded to the global ideas and culture heritage, be it the Swiss cultural heritage that is very much incorporated in his work as well. For example, with silks from the silk archives or cottons from other archives here in Switzerland. And his radical turn on resources is that he does only and without exception upcycle. Even his knitwear from the ready-wear collections is actually old jumpers, de-wired, washed and re-knitted again here in Switzerland. So it is a very radical turn on that. And also here with the ready-wear line, it is, even still, it's a very young brand, but he's really holding up and has this viable second way of making a business and purchasable fashion items. Of course, his custom-made garments are much more avant-garde, as we will see in a bit. All his garments are made in Switzerland, and it is really about this activism that is incorporated in his work. So while we've seen in the other two brands a very neutral design that was really about a good product, here we have a good product that also has a message, an activistic message. And so I find that very important and brave for a design, from a design perspective, because as a fashion designer, we feel the time, we feel what is going on, we feel what is important. And this is where we have to really also incorporate our a little bit like our views and our aesthetics that have maybe even a political viewpoint into these designs to make this dignified aesthetics. So I find his works very interesting. As you can see, this is more, here he combines ready-to-wear with the couture trousers, which gives this entire thing of an aesthetic of imperfection, but very high making standards. We have here the a collaboration with the Silk Association here in Switzerland. Yeah, so I really admire also this universe of melting cultures, really being a mirror of the society we live in right now, be it from the ecological standpoint and the cultural standpoint. Yeah, and his website, you see, there's a very different aesthetics. This would be a bit more like that. It even sometimes could look a bit shocking, and with this melting ice. This is from his installation, with which I want to finish also my lecture, that is called Crocodile Tears Won't Stop Climate Change. And from this installation, then he made an entire collection. And I think this is a very interesting take on sustainable fashion design in Switzerland. So yes, I hope this was interesting to you, and I'm open for any questions.
Okay, thank you very much, Isabel, for sharing all that with us. Now, the audience, if you have any questions for Isabella, please type into your chat box. We've got one question at the moment. So once I let you guys type your thing, let me just have a quick chat with Isabella there. So I actually loved your new concepts actually on the hierarchy of needs, because I think myself and many of our students really look at Maslow, but I think it's about time for all of us to really rethink what our needs are in fashion, and absolutely wonderfully presented in a simple form of a pyramid. So that one, definitely, I'm going to go back and share with my own students there to have them rethink their priorities, I think, in the way we need fashion. And that mindset about no sustainable fashion, but bad fashion, I absolutely agree with you on that one. Again, another mindset, like you said, of rethinking that supply chain and that consumer behavior when it comes to buying fashion. But I do have an answer to one of your questions to the audience just now about repairing socks, and I'm proud to say that my husband darned his own socks, not as beautifully as the one in the photograph. I've always been laughing at him about that, but actually I'm going to go back to him tonight and say I'm going to be very proud of him and say well done you, because I'm going to share with him your thing on it and let him know that he's been doing the right thing, at least contributing a small part to sustainable fashion in way of socks.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
Amazing.
The thing is, he and I come from the garment era, not the fashion era. We studied construction. So he still goes back and darn his things and we sew buttons and stuff rather than just throwing things away. But darning socks has been a joke between us, because I'm sorry, I don't darn my socks, but he does. So he'll darn it until it cannot be darned, kind of thing. But I'm going to have him look into more creative ways of making beautiful, happy socks. I think that's the way to go. Yeah. All right. Okay. Now, come on, guys, in the audience. We have one question only at the moment. Can a few of you contribute a few more questions? I'm sure there will be questions. All right. Now, let me just give my own question to you from my little take. Like, you know, we're all in education. And at our level, at high diploma or degree level, BA Hons, okay, what advice would you give these sort of potential designers or design students if they really want to create a brand more in a sort of sustainable directions? What is the initial advice you give to them whilst they're thinking up their concepts? What should they be considering?
Thank you for this question. I think it's a very vital one, considering that if there is a way to measure it, we at Fashion Revolution, we calculate that 80% of a garment's sustainability is actually decided by the designer. So my advice would absolutely be to meditate, really go inside. I know how it is to have a creative heart and a need to create. And in this need to create, I think then we need to, or young designers have to ask themselves, what do I contribute with my design? What do I contribute to the earth and to the status quo that we have right now, as we saw it in in the beginning. How do we contribute? Does my brand and my design contribute? Do I solve a problem with waste, for example? Do I solve a problem with my resources? We've seen it with a question with their banana tax solution. They have this open source. Everybody who is interested can go and learn for free how they made it, what is their process, what is the chemistry that goes with it, and everything. So this is an active contribution through their designs. This is the first thing that I would very advise. Think of a way that you can use your creativity and your entrepreneurship, because a designer who makes its own brand also is an entrepreneur in one way, in many ways even. How do I make the world better? Does it really need my design, or is it something that at the end will end at the coastline of Ghana? How do I prevent that? Of course, nobody wants this with their own products.
Okay, fantastic. Now, maybe I'll take that question from somebody called Eric here. I'm just reading it verbatim. I really like your idea of happy garment workers. He would like to know how to earn the support from consumers and producers in societies in order to keep up with new items. That was how he's written it on here.
I am very happy with happy garment workers as well.
I think it's about persuasion and convincing the rest of the world, isn't it? May they be consumers or suppliers or producers. I think that's where he wants to come from. So what sort of recommendation could you give basically for anybody like entrepreneurs or young designers to go out there and persuade and negotiate and so what are your take on that? I think that's what he wants to know.
I definitely say that you have to show the customers that they are more than a consumer. A consumer, to consume means has always inherently ingrained the waste. If we consume food, it will at one point it will go through us and be waste. And the problem with consuming fashion is that it doesn't disintegrate into the earth, etc. So we have to go away. So if you do the marketing campaign, value your customers as citizens and people, and make them understand that their purchase is an action that either validates the devastating status quo or contributes to a better future. Here, of course, it is very important not to greenwash. It is very important to show the process and complete transparency. If there is one point in your value chain that you are ashamed of, your customers should know about it. So very like radical transparency as a brand. And then also educating. I think it's more education than persuasion. It's educating them about the consequences of their purchase actions and also educating them on what they can achieve. And also that the interconnectedness. So you are the person who buys it. There was a very beautiful project called IOU, an Indian project where you could buy shirts and from Madras, like originally from Madras, the place called Madras, where they have looms and like weavers who make a very distinct fabric, and you could buy scarves and shirts, etc. And you could thank the actual person who made your scarf, the weaver or the farmer, and so there was like a direct link where you could
track it. You could track it, basically.
Track it and also interact with it. And what this made actually, so you had the customers super happy that they would see who made their garments. And through their thank you notes, the makers, the garment workers, were extremely motivated to work even better and make even better qualities because they were so happy about that. So I think it's education and valuing your customers.
I think I came across a garment from Cecilia Benson, and she has on her label a QR code. I think she's one of the young designers, very, up and coming now, that she actually, you can track in a very simple format where which person in the factory actually made her dresses. So I think that sort of aligns with what we're saying, that hopefully the production, the supply chain could be trackable, so that we know exactly where those things are coming from. May it be raw materials, may it be the person putting garments together, may it be the final product, and even the exporter, the person who's shipping it. Absolutely agree with you. Now we have a long question here. Let's quickly. Somebody from Nadine C. Thanks for this presentation, Isabela. I would like to hear your thoughts on this. What role do you think does guilt play in this discussion of changing one's consumption behavior? ? I think many people won't change their consumption behavior because they don't want to deal with the subject and their habits. You managed to present and inform us here today without guilt, in my opinion. Do you have any advice for talking to friends and family, etc.? ? Is it you practicing or your whole family, your whole tribe?
Well, yeah, I do actually sometimes have discussions with my younger sisters. I had the discussion about Shein as well. I have a teenage sister. For her, she has little money, but a very important fashion style.
Yeah.
So there is absolutely something to discuss. I think open discussion is very important, and also not shaming, but educating again. I think that most people have a sense for decency, and educate, so show up, like really demonstrate the connectedness of this product, where it came from, and what it also makes for you as a citizen, because being a consumer also in a way takes away a lot of action capacity from you, because you're always in this cycle, working, buying. Guilt can be transformed in action, in empowerment. I went, for example, to a Fridays for Future protest walk with my teenage sister, which was a very exciting moment even for her. She wasn't very motivated at the beginning. It wasn't her topic, and at the end, after this day, with listening to a lot of talks and peers of her own age and discussing, and also have her voice heard, in a sense, like not devaluate, like really validating the good intentions, showing also that fashion is so diverse and so rich. Fast fashion and the entire consumption waste ideology are actually a laugh in fashion's face. We have such a rich culture worldwide, so many cultures and so many great styles to adapt, that I think if you empower people to embrace their styles and fashion, and to love the garments really deeply, you can have these conversations without any shaming or guilt.
Absolutely, I agree. And also sharing and allowing other people to experience, like, you took your sister along to those marches, whatever concept that may be. And I think she was pretty convinced at the end, because it was an experience for her, rather than just nagging from an older sister kind of thing, which is very negative.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah. And I also think that positive experience and positive stories, for example, very well in the beginning, we saw this horrible picture of Rana Plaza, but also people expressing their needs, going out, being very brave. It is very dangerous in many parts to do that, and that people really reclaim their power and their notion for what is just. So I think this is something, when you make people understand the power that they have, or at least the ideal, like in the end, you can have also like accountability and mind of action on yourself, that really strengthens the relationship with the entire globe.
Absolutely. Okay. Any more questions from the audience in the computer, in the online? Any more? No. So if I think we've spent a bit of time now discussing things post your seminar. So Isabela, I think I'm going to let you go. So again, a real big thanks to you for basically sharing your own research, your own beliefs, your experience with us on sustainable fashion. Okay. Again, thank you very much. So this is a big thank you to Isabela Gygax from Zurich University of the Arts. And I hope to meet you in person one of these days, if you pop into Hong Kong or if I pass by Switzerland.
Absolutely. Always welcome. I would love to go and see all the friends in person with you.
Yeah. So any tutors and lecturers in the audience now, if you need me to disseminate the PowerPoint of Isabela to you, let me know. I'm Cassandra Ng from Image Design Department, all right? And then I would, because I have a copy of it, so I will disseminate it. And note that there's quite an interesting reading list at the end of her PowerPoint, although she didn't go through every single item word for word. There's some information like the hierarchy thing based on Maslow's needs, which will be interesting for, I think, students to further understand what Isabela's idea was about. I think it'll be, could be easy to explain from our perspective. All right. So have a good day, Isabela, and we'll leave you here. Yeah. Okay. Take care.
Thank you.
Right.
Bye-bye.
Thank you. Thanks to all the audience. Thank you.